Winning games with shutdown defense isn't just a strategy for the Flames. It's becoming their identity.
You're Locked On Flames, your daily podcast on the Calgary Flames. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to this edition of Locked On Flames, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the number one sports podcast network. Today's episode brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. The Flames win on defense. That is the formula for Calgary for the rest of the 2025-26 season, and it was proven against Chicago. We'll recap the game at United Center against the Blackhawks, see what went right and what went wrong, and on Fridays, we kind of summarize what we learned this week in Flames hockey. My name is Ryan G. I'm a lifelong play-by-play broadcaster based in the Pacific Northwest and been a big fan of the Calgary Flames ever since Peter Marr took me through the 2004 Stanley Cup final against the Tampa Bay Lightning, the Hall of Fame play-by-play broadcaster for Calgary, all the way up until 2014, by the way. I just recalled that last night as I was watching the Blackhawks broadcast. I want to say it's Rick Ball, who's the play-by-play broadcaster now for the Blackhawks and was formerly the TV voice of the Calgary Flames. And it was fun to hear his voice. It was fun to see Calgary get a victory. The Flames win 3-1 against Chicago. And it was an interesting matchup because the Flames really made the tempo feel like a game that Calgary could control. The type of game where there's limited shots, not a lot of rebound opportunities for a team that, I mean, any team at this point in the NHL is a better offensive team than the Calgary Flames because Calgary is just not good when it comes to their ability to score goals. And so if you make the game have limited shots, limit the amount of times that rebounds can come your way, it makes a big difference. Also, the Flames special teams continue to shine this week. They went 3 for 3 on the power play against Columbus on Tuesday, and they get their first goal from a power play tally in the matchup with Chicago. Ended up going 1 for 4 overall, but the PK unit is stellar for Calgary. They shut down all 4 opportunities for the Blackhawks, and that's an element of the defense that can take this Calgary Flames team in a positive direction. Is it a direction that will take them deep into the playoffs? With limited offense, I can't imagine there's enough defense in the world to limit the likes of the Avalanche. Even if Calgary were to make it into the bottom part of the Pacific Division, are they going to be able to stall the Edmonton Oilers? Or are they going to be able to stall the Seattle Kraken? Maybe the Kraken with a -8 goal differential. But that's clearly not the premise of this discussion. It's just the fact that if Calgary is going to win games, it's going to come on defense, especially using the Chicago game as an example. Calgary ends up scoring the first 2 goals of the game after Chicago gets its first, and all of that happens in the first 6 minutes of the contest. In fact, the Flames have won 5 of the last 6 when they've had their opponent under 30 shots. Very impressive, solid team victory. And Ryan Huska, Mackenzie Weegar, and Mikael Backlund shared that sentiment as they talked to NHL Flames on X.
We gave up 23 shots. I know there were some pretty good chances, and when we did break down, I thought Cooley was excellent for us, but it's important that we play a certain style of game, and I thought tonight we were more like ourselves. So we haven't been great on the road in regards to results we're getting this year, but hopefully this is a step in the right direction where we can build off it when we head home.
The energy was great, so kind of when they scored that first goal, I thought, the bench was still in good spirits. So power play, that unit right now is really clicking. So I think they got confidence, and PK, they bailed us out a lot that night or tonight. And Backs, our captain gets us going with a big shorthanded goal.
Our special teams were really good tonight, both ways, and cool, solid in that. Boys were. Like I saw some highlights when I was waiting out there. A lot of good big blocks from Weegsy and all the decor. So everyone stepped up tonight and grinded a big win going home before we go home here.
what's interesting about the way the Flames are talking about their goaltenders is they clearly love Devin Cooley as much as they like Dustin Wolf. I think every single skater for Calgary has faith in their goaltenders. And with Wolfie locked up very long term and with Cooley starting a 2-year contract extension going into next season, that is tremendous value that Calgary has in net. And as Ryan Huska shared, when things broke down, Cooley bailed us out. My initial reaction was like, I don't feel like he bailed you out. I feel like he just played the game solidly. But at the same time, there were a couple of shots that went off the shoulder or the helmet, or maybe at least that one moment that they showed a replay of where it went up kind of into the like right neck area of Cooley. But Devin was good. He's won 3 in a row. And so there's confidence that Calgary can put somebody in net who's going to stop shots. It seems more of a matter of if Calgary is going to limit the amount of shot attempts. And Mikael Backlund has been playing tremendously good hockey. The veterans for this team have been stepping up, and that's where the bulk of Calgary's success has been this year, which is definitely a discussion of how the younger players are both getting opportunities and then maximizing those opportunities. But Backlund, chopped a puck at one point early in this game that, got it out of the middle of the ice. And there's been little things like that that have been missing to provide the extra opportunities for Calgary's opponent's offense that have made so that Wolf is facing 40 shots a game instead of 20. On Thursday against Chicago, the Flames showed the kind of template that they can use to be victorious in these games. They also used a little aggression. It didn't work so much against Columbus, and I don't think the formula for Calgary, when I say they're going to win games defensively, is through trying to be bullies and get into a lot of fights. But Joel Farabee somewhat set the tone of having the physicality be part of the contest, and Kevin Ball pushed it to the next level when he ran into one of the Blackhawks players in the boards. But there was a big check there. There was also a moment that Ball got physical to stop a 2-on-1 break for the Blackhawks. Weegar injured himself, stopping a puck on the inside of his left ankle, ended up going to the locker room, but he wasn't out too long, came back in the third, and that was one of about 12 blocks that the Flames had. I think they had 11 at that point. So Weegar continues to find ways to contribute even when he's not scoring. That's something both Weegar and his coach Ryan Huska referenced with NHL Flames on X.
That's just how I'm contributing right now. So if that's the way, then so be it. I'll eat it. But it was a team effort tonight. It really was. I thought, the hit on Beezer could have maybe swung the momentum their way, but he stood up for himself, and then Baller responded well with a big hit. So, I think Beezer and Baller should get the red jacket for sure.
Mackenzie probably hasn't had the year that he would like to have point-wise or offensive-wise, but there's so many things that he does that probably go unnoticed a lot of nights, and you alluded to a couple of them with the shot blocks that you do see from him. Most nights he's our most physical defenseman, so there's a lot of things he's doing really well.
And those small moments are huge. A lot of the ways that veterans and team leaders contribute to a squad is not necessarily through all of the things that show up on a stat sheet. And this is across all of sports, is those little contributions that make a huge difference, and guys that coaches like Ryan Huska can rely on. It certainly seems like the Flames have that relationship between one of their best defensemen and their head coach. What went right? What went wrong? Calgary gets a victory against Chicago 3-1 on Thursday. We'll look at those pieces of the puzzle in our Chicago-Calgary recap when we come back on this episode of Locked On Flames. There is nothing like being near the center of the ice during hockey season. The speed, the hits, the atmosphere, it's unmatched. Watching at home is great, but being in the building is a completely different experience. The only thing that used to get in the way was actually getting tickets. There were long queues, endless screens, prices changing at checkout, and that's why the Game Time app gives the advantage back to the fans. It's the hack for unlocking amazing NHL tickets and experiences in just a few taps, and it is super easy to use. Remember last fall, I was in Los Angeles and decided impromptu to go to the Michigan USC game, pulled up the Game Time app. Everything that I needed to know was right there. It was easy to browse, compare, buy tickets. It took just minutes. I was right outside the Coliseum. And I really appreciate the fact that all of the fees are included up front. So the price that you see is the price you pay. And everything is backed by the Game Time guarantee, which gave me real peace of mind. Take the guesswork out of buying NHL tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL. That's LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Thank you so much for making Locked On Flames your first listen every single day. Thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. We are excited to see you in the Everydayer Club. If you haven't already, please check it out. It's where you can get ad-free audio feeds of this podcast, Locked On Flames. Plus, get into our members-only Locked On Everydayer Club Discord server. If you're not there, you're missing out. There's lots of conversations about all of the coverage of sports across the Locked On Podcast Network, and you're interacting with fellow fans, fellow Everydayer Club fans of shows like Locked On Flames, plus all the hosts that are here as well. We'd love to see you in there. The easiest way, go to lockedonflames.supercast.com or tap the link in the show notes to learn more. Chicago, Calgary, a victory for the Flames. They get a win on the road, finish the road trip with a 2-3 record, 2-3-0. Nothing went to an extra period, but Calgary limits the shots to the Chicago Blackhawks and win that game with another power play goal. What went right for Calgary? How about Igor Sharangovich? Has had a pretty good stretch of play stepping into that second line with Mikael Backlund and Matt Coronado after Blake Coleman went down with an injury. Coleman still listed as injured reserve, which means that at the time he was placed there wasn't likely going to play on Thursday because I believe the NHL rules with injured reserve didn't allow him to. I don't know if that means he's available potentially for Saturday's game against the Islanders. My initial understanding is that he would be, but Sharangovich has averaged about 6.5 minutes on ice over the month of January and has totaled 5 points with 4 assists, a multi-point night, as was Mikael Backlund against the Blackhawks. And the defense churning into offense is part of that discussion because Backlund scores the second goal of the game, ends up being the go-ahead goal, the game winner, with a shorthanded goal. And that's the Flames' 7th shorthanded goal of the season, which is tied for the NHL lead with the Los Angeles Kings. Impressive that Calgary is still finding ways to use defense to spark offense, and that's a credit to the penalty kill. Calgary's been stellar in the PK unit. So has Chicago, especially at home. So that was why Calgary's first goal coming from the power play was a little bit surprising on Thursday, but still a lot of credit thrown around from Ryan Huska and Mackenzie Weegar to the PK unit and coach Trent Cull as they spoke to NHL Flames on X.
Trent has done a really good job with our penalty kill of pre-scouting them and trying to get them to be a little bit more aggressive at the line. And if we can do that and create some loose pucks, then we want to be more aggressive overall. So I think it just comes down to trying to hold the blue line a little bit more. And then we had some guys that made good plays when the plays needed to be made.
Our PK's been, for a while now, has been going in the right direction. So we knew they got some weapons over there. But I think, the way that our penalty kill has been going, the way our details are, our sticks, the determination of block shots, when it counts, has really helped us. So I thought, giving them nothing on the PP was huge for us tonight.
You could tell Calgary felt prepared on the PK unit for the entire road trip. It feels like they've been prepared for the entire last 4 weeks that I've been doing this show. It's been one of the best parts about watching Flames hockey is that if they go a player down, you feel like they have you have confidence that the defense can step up, whether that's what's going on in net or the way things start off with each power play possession. And that's what stuck out to me on Thursday with Calgary is the disruption of the Blackhawks at the very beginning of each power play opportunity. Chicago was 0 for 4 in power plays, and there were several moments that right off the beginning, the Flames were disrupting things. About 8:18 left in one of the periods. I didn't keep that note fully intact, but they were able to send the puck down the ice. In fact, according to, I believe, the Flames official website, they only surrendered one power play shot in those 4 Chicago power plays over the course of the first 40 minutes of the game. And that's obviously impressive. I like that they jumped on the power play unit for Chicago right away and made their presence known. That's some of the things that went right in the win to finish out the road trip with a victory. Calgary will be opening up a 5-game homestand with the Islanders on Saturday. But what went wrong? Calgary is still not a threat. I really lean toward describing that as not an offensive threat in the least, but nothing about Calgary feels threatening, especially when you watch this game and you see someone like Connor Bedard, who missed the game earlier in the week against the Oilers, but bounces back and plays against the Flames. And there's players that you'll watch have a presence the entire time. And it's a little bit ambiguous. It's difficult to describe, but the generational types of talent like Connor Bedard that Flames fans are yelling from the rooftops that they want to have by being part of Team Tank, it makes sense. The moment that the game starts, all of a sudden you start to see pieces put together like a chessboard, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, there's the queen in the chessboard analogy, because they're moving all over the place. They're omnipresent, and Bedard sticks out that way in a way that Calgary just doesn't have. And it's disappointing. I mean, even the high danger scoring chances, you could argue that Calgary was fairly dominant in that game. If nothing else, you could hang your hat on the fact that Calgary played Thursday's game in a manner in which the Flames wanted to play. It likely wasn't like the Blackhawks' optimal situation. And if that's the case, Calgary still only had 6 high danger chances and only one more 5-on-5 scoring chance compared to the Blackhawks. Now, the shots on goal weren't out of whack. They were even across the board at 23. So having that number for both scoring chances, or 4 scoring chances, be fairly close isn't too unsurprising. But at the same time, Calgary is just not a threatening team, and that also showed on Thursday. Calgary won that game. They put their hat on the rack with a defensive game plan that worked. Devin Cooley was really, really good. He's won 3 in a row, but Calgary is by no means a threat. And I think that's where you hope the Flames will find something that is threatening in the upcoming NHL draft. So what did we learn this week? On Fridays, we recap everything that we took in about the week that was in Calgary Flames hockey, and we try to come out with some lessons. We'll do that next when this episode of Locked On Flames rolls on. The wild card round is here, and FanDuel is officially in playoff mode. Every game day during the NFL playoffs, FanDuel is giving customers even more ways to get in on the action. Because right now, every NFL game day in the playoffs, FanDuel is giving users a profit boost pack. It's waiting for them inside the app. Every single game day, you'll get a pack loaded with multiple profit boosts that you can apply to the bets that you like most. You open it up first thing on game day, you see which ones you want to apply, and they lean into the things that you're already feeling in terms of your game day instincts, whether you're backing momentum or you like the coaching matchup. The boosts give you more juice on the bets that you already like instead of forcing you to go after something new. And that makes every play feel bigger. You make your picks, then apply your profit boosts to go after even bigger payouts while the playoffs get rolling. So visit FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL, and grab your profit boost pack every NFL playoff game day. If you've ever hired someone who looked good on paper but wasn't the right fit, you know how important that is. When your candidates truly match what you're looking for, you need to trust Indeed sponsored jobs. Hiring? Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other sites. Indeed sponsored jobs put your post at the top of the page and help you reach the right candidates faster. I had a staff of 20 working retail back in my managerial days. And if I needed to hire someone new, it was always difficult. Instead of struggling to get my job post seen, I could have just used Indeed sponsored jobs and help get candidates to me as quickly as possible, reach those quality candidates faster, and have my listing stand out. And according to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed are 90% more likely to report a hire than non-sponsored jobs. Spend more time interviewing candidates who check all your boxes with less stress, less time, and more results using Indeed sponsored jobs. Listeners of this show get a $75 sponsored job credit to help give your job the premium placement it deserves at Indeed.com/lockedon. Just go to Indeed.com/lockedon right now and support the show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Coming up on Monday's edition of Locked On Flames, we look at the official Locked On jersey power rankings of the opponents that face the Calgary Flames. I love sports aesthetics, and so would love to know which look you like the best from any of the opponents for the Calgary Flames. And if you have any reason to doubt that the Flames still have one of the best looks in all of the National Hockey League, we'll do that on the Monday edition of Locked On Flames. What did we learn this week about Calgary? The trade rumors, it's so beyond rumors at this point. They're not trade rumors. They're trying to figure out what the trade puzzle will look like for Calgary as Rasmus Andersson is going to get traded. I'm resigned to that fact. It's not really an if, it is a win. I think at this point, if Rasmus were to not be traded, that would be shocking, as opposed to if he were to be traded even for a lesser package than perhaps Calgary Flames fans would prefer. However, Rasmus continues to play well. I think the Flames, in part on Friday or on Thursday against the Blackhawks, were fairly loose. They felt like they were having fun, and I wonder how much of that is the week that was with Rasmus Andersson getting into a fight on Tuesday for the first time in forever against the Columbus Blue Jackets. Is Rasmus leaning into the fact that, hey, boys, if I'm not going to be here very much longer, let's just make some memories. And I think that's kind of how it's been feeling, especially the game against Chicago, because Calgary just looked unwound. They looked loose. And so maybe Saturday's game, the first of the 5 games from Scotiabank Saddledome, is a little bit of a curtain call for Rasmus Andersson. Calgary's still using its older players too. There's not a lot of William Stromgren on the ice. You're not getting a lot of Braden Pahal. Granted, he was in the lineup on Tuesday against Columbus, but then there's not a lot of spaces to put him either. I mean, you even have Zane Parekh, who's right now still listed as out on the status report. That's actually an update from Thursday, that Parekh is listed as out as opposed to day-to-day, maybe an AHL conditioning stint on the horizon for Parekh. But there's not a lot of spaces in the defenseman pairings for younger players like Pahal and for Brustevich, who's been great. He played on Thursday. There's not a lot of space to put them anyway. So if Andersson were to get traded, it would open up some opportunities, whereas someone like Stromgren playing even in one of those 2 bottom lines for Calgary, there's not a lot of space for him with their current construction. And so you also could argue, I don't think I am, but you could also argue that there's value in trading someone like Blake Coleman or Nazem Kadri just to start giving spaces for your younger players to develop. I don't think I want to see Coleman traded. I do think Coleman is a very attractive piece, especially compared to Kadri and all of the contract pieces that would have to go into a successful Kadri trade. But Coleman feels like a leader, a rock, somebody, especially as Andersson would move on, you'd want to have on this team still. And I don't think that that's likely to happen if Coleman stays healthy, especially as we get into the actual trade deadline. But right now there's just not a lot of spaces to start using younger players unless you put like Stromgren in place of Jonathan Huberdeau, who is statistically just not producing the amount that you need from someone like that. And it's not a surprise that you continue to see the Matthew Tkachuk trade that brought Huberdeau to the Flames as being a lopsided trade, no matter how good Mackenzie Weegar, who was another part of that package, has been. But Calgary's talent, we've learned that they're just also murky middle. That's the term that's been branded with Calgary and how they continue to be a playoff contender year after year, even though they don't have amazing talent. Calgary's talent is just not bad, but they're also not elite. I referenced that earlier with Connor Bedard. Their top point scorer in Nazem Kadri, 99th in the NHL. There's 227 players who have scored at least 20 points this season. And so the trade pieces that Kadri and Coleman would bring in terms of high value to a roster, certainly they're high value because of leadership and experience, but there's not a chance that they're going to be like a Mitch Marner is right now for Vegas, where you get a guy who's scoring 49 points. And I guess that game against the Maple Leafs on Thursday was a thriller. Marner's tied for second in terms of points with the Vegas Golden Knights right now. So all of that to say, I don't think Calgary is going to be able to provide somebody with a tremendous amount of return. But at the same time, Calgary can benefit if they end up getting some of these pieces like Rasmus Andersson into picks and possibly a player or two that might emerge in Calgary's system as opposed to where they came from. I want to give Adrian Kiss a quick nod out of Flames Nation because Calgary could have a lot of draft capital, especially if they were only to trade Andersson. Adding another first-round pick is likely, at least, if not more draft capital than that. But Kiss pointed out the Flames have selected in the top 10 just 9 times in the organization's 45-year history. I think that shows you how valuable, or rather, how successful the Flames have been. Another area of perspective that I can bring is, as a Denver Broncos fan, born in the 80s, the worst stretch of Broncos football in my whole entire life was the last 10 years prior to Bo Nix being drafted, from Super Bowl 50 until the 2024 NFL season. And it just shows you how successful your franchise has been, how spoiled you are when you're not routinely drafting. When Denver finally had a top 4 pick in my lifetime and they took Von Miller second overall, that was the shocking part, was because I'd never seen the Broncos have a pick that high. And it sounds like Flames history shows that's kind of the same thing, as Calgary's never had a top 3 pick. The highest overall pick that they've ever had was 4th, and that's when they picked up Sam Bennett back in 2014. So all of that to say, this might be a somewhat unprecedented year for the amount of capital that Calgary will have in the 2026 NHL entry draft. And if that ends up paying dividends, it might be enough to put Calgary into that new stadium, new arena, with a pretty exciting younger group of players with still some pretty key defensive pieces who at that point will certainly still be labeled a veteran. Dustin Wolf 2 years, 3 years from now is a veteran goaltender. And so I think the future is still exciting for the Flames. And I think there's a lot of ways that plays out, not just if they find a way to be at the very bottom and have the best chance at a lottery pick. I think Calgary, even if the season doesn't change dramatically right now, will still be in a good situation. Granted, Rasmus Andersson is likely not part of the puzzle. And that's slightly heartbreaking, just because I always like to see guys who have meant a lot to a franchise finish out with that franchise. And that is very, very difficult to do. On Monday's show, we will recap the Islanders Calgary game, preview the Devils Calgary game that happens on Monday, and we'll have your official opponent jersey power rankings, the OOJPR, on the next edition of Locked On Flames. Thank you so much for being here, and look at joining our Everydayer Club. It is built for you. If you never miss a show, go to lockedonflames.supercast.com. You get access to the show, audio, ad-free, and members-only Discord access. That's Supercast, or rather, lockedonflames.supercast.com. Please subscribe to the show and follow Locked On Flames so you can get all of the latest episodes. And for those of you who are on video, we send you over to the first ever 24/7 National Locked On Podcast Network YouTube channel. On audio, make your second listen NHL game night on Locked On NHL. My name is Ryan G. Wishing you the best weekend that you can have. We'll see you again on Monday for more Locked On Flames.